Good evening, Riveters, and welcome to another fanciful edition of Rivet City's Rivet Flash. I'm your host, Tritus. With me is Red and Wolfpaw. How's it going, guys?
Going well.
Excellent. So, let's dig right into this week's events, starting with Wolfpaw. What do you got for us?
All right, I have a little scientific psychology experiment for you. We all
Okay.
have things that make us cringe when we see it or we hear it, that pitch or that sight that just triggers that response. But I have the flip side of that. It's called ASMR, or the Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. ASMR for short.
Okay.
And it is the sense when you hear or see something that causes the tingles from your scalp down your spine, and it's what causes the goosebumps in the good way. It's considered the euphoric feeling from hearing things.
Okay.
Everyday sounds like
So
whisper.
Well-
Not even a sexual way. It's literally you hear somebody rustling pages in a book, or
it's that feeling
tapping.
of getting. It's that feeling of like getting hit by a warm shower when when you've just been outside, when it's wintertime or something like that, right? Just that
or
just that hit.
feels so
Yeah,
good. Just the
The
tingles.
relief, maybe, right?
A good song came on, and you're yes. It's yeah, and it's actually a really growing community on YouTube that they have visual and audio for these ASMR videos. They can range anywhere from 15 to 10 plus hours, depending on what they do. They have, some people have really good setups, like Gentle Whisper. She's been doing it for like 3+ years that I've gone into for her videos. I'm included a video link to her introduction to what is ASMR. It's a good starting place for anyone who's never done it before. It's most times it's just brushes. They're making the noises, whispering really softly into the mics, and they'll have 3D stereo mics, so you need to have headphones to really get immersed into the sound. And some do role play to get you really into the mindset of it, and it's a really unique experience that you can just relax and get into.
That's awesome. So these videos are inducing that that feeling, right? So each video plays a certain sound or certain effect or what have you, and the purpose is to induce that feeling, right?
Yes, that the end result of the video is to get the tingles or the euphoric feeling.
Gotcha.
And it actually has psychology studies on it, starting back in 2007, and I can't remember which college it is off the top of my head,
Okay.
but they've been doing studies since at least 2007 that I read on the induction of this autonomous sensory response.
That's really cool. So it's kind of like almost a kind of like a mental massage.
Yeah, something like that, where your nerves are literally like, this is a sound I like. Let's do tingles. Like, oh yeah.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, check that out, and we'll put a link to one of those videos in the show notes, just to give everybody an example of that. Right. That sounds really interesting. Cool. I like that.
no more important people to study than ourselves.
Right. All right. What else you got?
Red, do you have anything? Because that's about all I got for this week. I've been literally
Right.
living
Sound-
in these videos.
And that's all cool. That is plenty. All right, Red. What do you got for us?
Well, more depressing news on the privacy front this week. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld what they call the third-party doctrine. It's a legal theory that says once you trust your information to a third party, you have no expectation of privacy. So Wolfpaw and I are passing notes in class, and we sit right next to each other. I write something on a note, I give it to Wolfpaw, Wolfpaw gives it back to me. We keep this going. We have an expectation of privacy. I wrote the message. I know what it says. I handed it to her myself. She knows what it says now. She wrote a response. She also knows what her response is. Gave it back to me. I read it right. It's kind of a complete chain there.
Yep.
Well, we go into the next class, and we're like 2 rows apart now. And I write her a note, and I pass it to Tritus. So Tritus can pass it to Wolfpaw. And so their theory there is that once I gave it to Tritus, I can no longer expect that message is going to be private. And that kind of works okay on paper, right? Like actual physical paper. I have paper documents, like when the Fourth Amendment was written, and private things within my home that are mine, that are objects I control, and that if I were to give them to someone else, a third party, I wouldn't expect them to be private anymore. That's where that comes from. That those ancient times where third parties were rarely ever dealing with our stuff, or we knew exactly what and how we were giving third parties information or things.
Yeah, not to mention that all that stuff wasn't flying through the air over radio waves or flying through over the wires and things of that nature. It was a physical item that you were handing to somebody.
Yes. But now our sleazy surveillance state is frequently using that. Like the case that they ruled on this time was about cell phone location data, right? Okay. You've got a Google phone, you've got an Apple phone. You're constantly giving your location to third parties, and ideally, anti-privacy fuckwits want, oh, you gave your location to Google, so now we can get it for free. You know, it's not private anymore. It's not private between you and Google. You gave it to a third party. They can do what they want with it, including give it to us. You know, tell that out of them, and that's trash, and that doesn't really fit into the modern world.
No.
I mean, even in the last 20 years, email has changed from back in the day, your email would live on the server only as long as it took you to dial in, fire up your email client, and pull it to your machine.
Right.
But now, like, Rivet City's email is in Google. It never leaves Google. It's there. It's not on my computer. It's not on your computer. It's not on Wolfpaw's computer. But Google works tirelessly to try to make sure that they can't give that to the government.
Right.
And ideally, the government would be saying, we're not entitled to that information without a warrant. But they're not. And that's horrible.
Because government.
Yes. Because privacy.
Yeah. Well, that's a chapter.
Yeah. But it's still the Fourth Circuit Court, and not, like, I'm still trying to understand the one thing. You know, I've been delving into privacy for years now, but I still don't really understand how the various levels of the federal court system works. Because, you know, in one area of the country they'll have one ruling, and then in the other area they'll have a contradictory ruling, and then a couple of years later it'll finally hit the Supreme Court, and then we'll have a, you know, it's hard to know which ruling actually applies to you or not.
Right.
And as you move around, it can sometimes change.
Yeah,
not always.
And then, you know, of course, dealing with internet, you know, information that could apply anywhere, right?
Yeah. I mean, at our mutual previous employer, Safe Harbor, we had some clients that we were spinning up servers in the cloud in the EU because the EU had stronger privacy protections for their data.
Right.
We were working for American companies spinning up servers in the EU because in the EU their data was safe.
Right. Sad.
Yep.
Well, hopefully that'll improve someday.
We can only hope.
Right.
So what do you have?
What do I have? Okay. I have 2 things. Well, one thing, I was just hearing that there is a Harvard scientist. His name is George Church. He and a team of scientists are looking to start building a synthetic human genome, specifically to kind of start the process of building out a full genome and starting to do synthetic human DNA. The idea is that they wanted, to do this to cure diseases, build organs, that kind of thing. So they're starting to look into what that's actually going to look like, and then start actually trying to do it and experiment with it. Of course, it's causing a lot of controversy because of the whole idea of creating humans, creating the perfect human, etc. I mean, I don't know how many sci-fi shows we've all seen that,
We've all seen Gattaca, right?
Yeah, exactly. The whole, that whole, genome sequencing, the us versus them. Look at Deus Ex, Human Machina. If you've ever played those games, the list goes on. But it's happening. They're saying that they will not be trying to create humans, but I mean that's always going to be a question or concern when it comes to this, right? I mean, it's the same thing when it comes to cloning. It's the same thing, when it comes to building, artificial intelligence. So I'm curious to see where that goes. But I will put a link to the show notes, and you guys can read all about that.
Well, I think the biggest point there is that the technology exists. The cat's out of the bag, folks. I mean, I've always found some of the debates, like, you remember when we were kids, it was Dolly the Sheep, right?
Yep.
Right.
Everybody was freaking out because Dolly, Weekly Reader, which I'm going to reference again because I don't know, I loved Weekly Reader as a kid.
Yes.
Dolly the Sheep, Dolly the Sheep, Dolly the Sheep. The morality of cloning, playing God, yada, yada, yada. The technology exists, you can't destroy it. You just have to we're smart enough to handle it.
Right, and then and for the people who are handling it to have that tempered discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can, I had the thought when I was reading about it that we kind of already are, kind of breeding ourselves in a sense of where we're like instinctually in our mammalian brain we're looking for the perfect mate, right? Like the right mate. This of course depends on if you're what gender you are, or or non-gender binary, or what orientation you are, etc. But if you're taking just an example of a cisgendered male or female who is into the opposite sex, like they're trying to find, and I suppose this even applies to everybody regardless, but everybody's trying to look for the perfect mate, right? So to them. And so, in a sense, we're already biologically trying to make better humans, right? So, it's not much of a step to do it technologically.
Well, we're doing something, whatever it is, right? So when you ever look at a couple and go, how, why?
Yeah, I'm not saying. I'm not saying it's a foolproof process. There's it's one side or the other. I mean, it could go all over the place. But I mean, it's what if you were able to, what if you had a couple who could see that they're going to give, like they could have a child, but that child's got a 95% chance of getting, I don't know, a defective gene that's going to give them some degenerative disease down the road, right? Wouldn't you want to have the ability to turn that thing on or off? I mean, so then, so that you have that,
and
is
then
that
we cycle all the way back to the movie Gattaca, which I've watched in every biology class ever of all time.
But anyway, those are, then you can go back and forth all day long on that, but food for thought, I guess, was where I was going with that. Okay, so on that note, Mr. Elon Musk was just chatting in the last week or so with a group at a conference, and he made a comment and elaborated on it a little bit. He thinks we're all in a simulated environment. His theory is that we're all basically Sims, and that
would explain so much about you.
Is that why life is just so funny?
I don't randomly set the house on fire, I don't know, or combust for that matter.
Did you put the baby in the oven again?
Matt, I can't apply for a job in the life of crime.
But no, like his reasoning is that you look at 40 years ago you had Pong, right? Like two rectangles and a dot. That's what games were back then. If you ever saw the first video game, and you'll see those in a bunch of museums. And I saw it in Albuquerque when I was there. They had full models of the first game. It's really incredibly simple. And then now, 40 years later, look what we have now, right? We've got Star Citizen coming out.
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky. I mean, the list goes on, right? Imagine that. I mean, so then you take that and you assume that if there are advanced civilizations, and we are not alone in the universe, they either we are a part of their advanced matrix like simulated environment, or B, they have those things, and then there are like beings out there that are in a simulated environment. It all kind of hinges on the idea that there are advanced civilizations out there. It would be a boring universe if there weren't. I mean, it would be ridiculous for me. It would be ridiculous to think that we're the only ones out here.
I would agree
we're not
with
advanced.
that specific sentence you just said.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find the simulation talk rather annoying without more. I mean, it's just so too theoretical.
There's not enough evidence. Right. I mean, it was a comment. It's not like he's coming out and saying like, I am completely certain that this is a thing. He's like, no, it's it's a fun thing. He likes to throw. A lot of people like to throw that around.
A couple years ago, there was a paper, and they said some scientist somewhere thought we were in a simulation, and I was just like,
well, there was a
way to make me pointless. Thanks.
Right. Well, there was a. And I'm forgetting. I'd have to dig into this, but there was a research study that said that if the universe was at a certain or had certain building blocks, gosh, and I'm just blanking on this, but we could essentially prove that we were in a matrix-like environment, or we were a similar environment. And so far, it was proven that we were not. But that being said, that's still based on our limited understanding of theoretical physics. Being the physics theory. But anyway, it was an interesting food for thought. So that's what I have this week. The next piece I want to talk very briefly about is that yesterday we filmed our pilot for our web series, Nerds and Cars Getting Comics. I am going to edit this as soon as we're done with this little chat, and I'm going to see if we can get that out there for everybody to see tomorrow. So check it out. Keep an eye out on our social media. Nerds and Cars Getting Comics is a pilot. If you guys like what you see, we will make more. It may be more Nerds and Cars Getting Comics. It might be nerds on skates getting ice cream. I don't know. I mean, it could be any number of things. But we want to try this out and see if you guys like it. If you do, we'll do more. So, cool. That's what I have for this week. You guys got anything else?
I don't know. The simulation reminded me of that Stargate Atlantis episode where Shepard and McKay are playing against each other in an RTS.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually find out it's a planet.
Yeah, it is an actual place, and there's an actual war going on. Like, oh, yeah, you reminded me of something that somehow reminded me of this. We will be at 2DCon this weekend, so at least 4 of us will be. 2DCon will be at the Doubletree in Bloomington, Minnesota. It is a very large gaming convention hosted by some of our friends. It's a pretty big deal, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll be there from Friday afternoon to Sunday afternoon. So if you happen to be at 2DCon, come on down, come find us.
You might get a button.
And you might get a button.
I'm going to have so many buttons.
Yes, come find us, come get a button.
Additionally, Didact is streaming in my place tonight because he's a real pal. But yeah, we're streaming tonight.
Sounds great. It'll be at 10 o'clock tonight.
Yes, it will. It'll be Battleborn.
All right, sounds good. That'll be great. So it'll be 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Didact will be streaming. And then tomorrow, Wolfball, you will be streaming, correct?
Yep.
Perfect. Cool. All right. That's all I have, guys.
Mm-hmm.
All All right, Rivers. We will see you next week. Otherwise, we might see you at 2DCon.
2DCon!
Yay!